Gather with them. English.
English.
Gather with them.
English and Kannada.
Krishna Swamiji.
It's his writing compiled by Sri V.L. Nagaraj. It's all full English, something?
You only English.
Okay, then.
1 second. Sir.
The other one is Kannada.
Gems on the path of absolute. Om. Both are Ganga, Krishna Swami, and it is English and Kannada.
One page English, one page Kannada.
Right. Left side is English and right side is Kannada.
Come 1 second. Come 1 second. Hold it. Yeah. Thank you.
This will be available for distribution in the ground.
Yeah, but hopefully.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om Gum Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Aim Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Gananam Tva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavim Kavina Upamashtavattamam Jeshtadagam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anasrinmannodivissi Dasadanam Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Om Yasyatmabodhasya Guruprasadati Aham Vimuktasmi Samsara Bandhati Sarvopadishti Shivananda Murte Mardhapriyukmam Pranadasmi Nityam Dayasindhum Dinabandhum Shatrattavodanapatum Maskalindra Bhagam Naumi Sri Chidananda Satgurum Om Pranidam Dukkha Hattadu Jnanadum Bhuvana Muktaye Shivananda Jidanandu Astri Guru Sattamo Om Shantatmanam Pranadasalamam Siddhavidya Prabhavam Bhaswadrupam Sulanayam Bhaktakarmadivarkam Prajnavrutam Nisamadisham Pragagam Nityakivatyam Sakshat Isham Guruvaram Shivanandam Natosmi Shivanandam Natosmi Om. I am happy to be here and to participate in this centenary, as part of the centenary celebration function of our beloved Sri Swami Krishnananda Maharaj. Maybe some 20 years before, I was asked to write an opinion in our Rebellious magazine on a book. Sometimes some people send their book publications and they will ask the rights of opinion about this, review of the book. So that book was a big book, 600 pages. And size also very big. Then I said, I need at least 30 days to read this book, and then another 4 or 5 days to write the review. Without reading, I cannot write the review. So if you want to write the review this month, it is not possible, somebody else can write. If you want me to write, I will give after 30, 40 days, it will come on the next issue. Okay, they said. That book is by 4 Vedas and 10 Upanishads. That's a compilation. So one person, basically I don't remember his name, it was a Bhavan's publication, and it was a compilation by an electronic engineer. He took 10, 15 years to write on this. The 10 Upanishads or the 4 Vedas. That is, the Prasthana tradition is the people study, the traditional people study certain things. And one such thing is called Prasthana. Prasthana means the Bhagavad Gita, the major 10 Upanishads, and Brahma Sutras. So he has confined to the 10 Upanishads only. The 10 Upanishads comes from the 4 Vedas. So the title of the book is The 4 Vedas and the 10 Upanishads. And he has given all the mantras of the Upanishad, all the 10 Upanishad mantras, verbatim meaning, and then special commentary by certain selected authors. So, first the Ishavasya Upanishad means the first mantra and what is the meaning. So, whosoever wants to read any page you can read it. So, you want to open one page and it is complete by itself. You get the mantra, the meaning. And below that, a special commentary on that. So, if you want to read that, you can read. So, it is convenient for busy people. So, it has made like that. So, in that, the meanings he has selected. The verbatim meaning of the slokas he has selected from Swami Shivananda. And some of the special commentaries also from Shivananda. So out of the 10 authors, 3 belong to the Shivananda Parampara, Swami Shivananda Maharaj, Swami Krishnananda, and Swami Chinmayananda. And those Chinmayananda Swami has got his own vision. He belongs to this Parampara only. So 3 others. All the other remaining, they are from other people, some from the Ramakrishna mission, from the and some others, the Western authors. Why I say this? Because our ashram is a simple ashram, but they have got such a recognition. They have got mastery over the spiritual subject, philosophy, mastery over the philosophy. Whether it is Swami Krishnananda Maharaj, or whether it is Swami Siddhanta Maharaj, or whether it is Venkateshwara Swami, or whether it is Gurudev Swami. They have mastery over the subject. So, from the angle of tradition, Gurudev has commented upon the Prasthana. All the Upanishads he has written commentary for the 10 Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and also the Brahma Sutras. Krishna Swami has also written commentary for, not exactly the word by word commentary, but he has given the summary of all the Upanishads and the esoteric meaning of all the Upanishads, and Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita also. Philosophy of Bhagavad Gita has written a book. He has not written word by word meaning or sloka by sloka meaning, but he has brought out the esoteric meaning. Swami Siddhanta Maharaj has not touched upon any of this. He has not written any textbook. Bhagavad Gita has not made any commentary, or any Upanishad has not made commentary. But all his lectures will be based on some of the Upanishads or some of the Gita slokas or Brahma Sutras. But it will not be very clear. Those who know the subject very well, from where this idea comes. So the idea will be very simple, understandable to everyone, but it has got its root at the text. Krishna Swami is also like that, but it is more technical. So I used to think like that. Those who have studied it traditionally, they there is one, the presentation varies from place to place. Suppose if I speak to you on, suppose if you ask me to speak on Brahma Sutra, suddenly I speak about the Adhava Brahmadikya, technically I speak, you will not understand anything. Now it will be useful to you. So, if I have to speak on Brahma Sutra to an audience, how it should be presented, I should have an idea. A child asks, Swami, what is Brahma Sutra? Brahma Sutra is big books and it speaks about the Brahmasmi and all these things. If you tell a child, the child will not understand. So you have to tell this child in such a way that he has some idea. And a very qualified person comes, he has to be told in a different way. A modern man comes, he has to be told in a different way. So the ancient people also thought that way only. And that is how it is presented also. Now the Vedas are there. Many of you might not have studied Vedas. You might not have even heard of mantra Vedas. Many might not have even known what Vedic mantra. And if you not even, if you do not know, then what to say about the meaning of it? So many have no idea about what Veda contains. What is the content of the Veda? What is mantra and all these things. Then later on the Upanishads. Upanishads doesn't not part of Vedas. They come under different section. So that's when Prasthanatri, Vedas are not taken, only Upanishads are taken. So Upanishads are different. And then the Puranas are different. Then the Smriti comes different. Then the literature is different. All are different things. But all these things speak the same subject. Whether it is the Vedas, we will include Veda and Upanishad together for this purpose. The Vedas speak what they speak, the content of the Vedas and the content of the Smritis. That is Manusmriti or these Puranas, there's Bhagavad, Mahabharata and all these things. And then this literature. All are same thing only, but it is told in different ways. It will, for a common man, it will appear they are different. You all know some stories of Mahabharata. What is the relevance of the Mahabharata story with reference to the Vedas? Vyasa Bhagavan says that I have divided the Vedas. The Vedas are one. I have divided into four: Rigveda, Sama, and Atharva. And for those who cannot understand that, I have made the fifth Veda, the Mahabharata. So the content of the four Vedas are only brought in Mahabharata. But Veda, there is no story. You won't have this Arjuna and Bhima and all those people are there, the fight, the war between them, Arjuna, Bala, the stories, all these, none of these things are there in this Veda. But these are all told in the Mahabharata. And there are Smritis, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita also considered as a Smriti, because it is part of the Mahabharata. Although Mahabharata is a big book with number of stories, in between there will be philosophy. In between there will be, somebody will be giving a good Upadesha to, somebody will raise a question and then give an Upadesha. There may be little philosophy there. So there is a blending of philosophy and stories, mostly stories. But these stories have a relevance actually. These stories have a relevance to the Vedas. The content of the Vedas, what the Vedas speaks, the very same thing is spoken in the Mahabharata. The very same thing is told by Kalidasa in some of his works. Even if you take one story of Abhijnan Shakutara or Meghdut, some of the stories of Kalidasa, or in the stories also, the very same idea is presented. So only the methodology of presenting the subject differs because those who are receiving those to whom it is being told, depending upon their capacity to understand, the subject matter is presented in different ways. What initially I told you, that what is to be told at one level may not suit at another level. What is to be told to Sanskrit Pandits who have studied Upanishads, etc., that should not be told in the Veda society branch meeting, because the people here may not have that caliber to understand those things. But what is told there, that should be told here also, but it should be in a different way. So it is told in a different way. So they say it like this. Veda says in one way, it is called Pramusamhita. That Veda is Pramusamhita. Veda speaks about the things as if it's a constitutional book. You know, Income Tax Act. Income Tax Act, if you study, you will not understand anything. You have to consult an auditor. Auditor says this is a guidebook, he will also go through a guidebook. And this is the case, one examples are worked out according to the book. Okay. Likewise, it's all mandatory provision. It is like a law book. In the law book, big sentences will be there. And those sentences, if you will not be able to read it in one breath, then what to understand? So now we also have the same experience. We read the Income Tax rules. We never understand it. Likewise, the Vedic statements are very cryptic, and they are called mandatory. If you do this way, like a mandatory. So it is not easy to understand. So sometimes it is told like that. It is like a Prabhu is Lord, His Majesty. The government declares this is to be done this way. Even the COVID protocol, this behavior pattern, and then every day they are giving rules. And every day they are changing also. And when they make a change, they will refer to the other one. In that they will refer to the other one. So what is from the first one to read up to this is very difficult. So like that, it is actually made in such a complicated way. So you can't understand it unless you are very thorough with it. So Vedas are called mandate. He speaks as if Lord speaks. I usually give an example. A father wants to give some direction to the son. And because of the relationship, suppose if the son is doing something wrong, he can't directly tell you, my dear, you are doing wrong, you please correct. He cannot say like that. So he will indirectly tell, he will call his wife and tell him, this is very bad, it's not be done. Like that he will say, so that they are sure to hear it. So such mandatory provisions are all the Vedas say everything in mandatory way. This you should do, this you should not do. And you have to do like this. Nobody will receive that. So Veda says like that. The very same thing is made in a very simple way. When it comes to the Puranas, when it comes to the Mahabharata, it is told in a little more milder way. So it is called Suhrit Samhita. As a friend will speak to you, he speaks to you as a friend speaks. What the father said, hey, you should not do this. The friend will say, my dear, you are doing something, this is not good for you. This will happen to you. Why don't you stop it? The very same thing, the Purana. And in the case of literature, when it comes to literature, it is called Kanta Samhita. It speaks like a wife will tell you that. It speaks like, my dear, if you do like this, it will affect us. So she waits for an opportune time and then nicely proceeds. That is how it differs. And we will find this difference in the way it is presented by our Swami Krishnani Maharaj, Swami Shivani Maharaj, and Swami Chirandi Maharaj. Same thing we will find actually. Krishnaswami Maharaj are very shorted To read it, one sentence, you have to read it 10 times to understand actually. If anybody says, I'm going to translate Krishna's of these books means, I used to think 2 times whether they will be able to understand what he has said. It is very difficult to understand his presentation, long sentences, and the core ideas he has taken from the Vedas, from the Upanishads. Very, very difficult to translate. So such as Krishna's presentation. Gurudev has put it in a little more simpler way. So Chidananda Maharaj has never touched the subjects. He touches it in a different, entirely different way. You will find the same difference. One or two examples I give you. Not from that book. So, for example, the Mahabharata story, we all know the story. Mahabharata. It's a what is Mahabharata? Mahabharata is a story of war between the Pandavas and Kauravas. And the Pandavas and Kauravas, or any Purana I take for example, in all the Puranas, the war, there will be a war, there will be Asuras and there will be Devatas. The Asuras conquer the Devatas, and the Devatas lost all their power. Then they go and pray to Bhagavan. Bhagavan takes an avatar, kills the Asuras, and then re-establish the kingdom of the Devatas. This will be the story. The same idea is that in the Mahabharata also, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, Pandavas were more dharmic and the Kauravas are adharmic. Then Bhagavan Sri Krishna comes to the aid and kills all these people, and then the Pandavas gain the kingdom. So you should remember this, the Pandavas and Kauravas are cousins. They belong to the same family. The Devatas and Asuras, the Devas and Asuras, they are also cousins. They are not two different, it's not a war between England and the other country, and they are different people. It's not like that. They belong to the same family, children of the same father. So the war is always between the brothers. The war is always between the sisters. You don't have a good relationship with your brother. Many of you think your own personal life. You are not happy with your own people. So the war is always between brothers. From the Veda, there is a mantra which says, Ma brata brata vishan swasara utaspasa. Let not the brother hate the brother. Let not the sister hate the sister. The war is always between known people. Two unknown people will never quarrel. You will quarrel only with your wife, with your brother, with your son. The conflict is between those who are near to each other. And why it is so? Why are you quarreling with your brother? Why you are quarreling with your neighbor? Why you are quarreling with your wife? Why you are not happy with your son? Have you really thought about it? We are all disturbed by that, We have our own problems. Our problems are our quarrel with our non-agreement. We are not able to agree with the other person who is very close to us. Whether the American foreign policy is right or wrong, I am not worried. My family policies, whether my wife is doing, whether she is not doing what as I wish, my brother is not doing what I think correct, my father is not doing what I think correct, he is doing his own way, I am doing my own way, and this is conflict. Why this conflict? Have you thought about it actually? This is what is spoken in Vedas. Don't think that Vedas speaks something about God. God is not there, God is even here. Why you are always in conflict? Mahabharata is a conflict between brothers. It's a family feud, a war between brothers. All the Purana stories, the Devatas and Asuras quarreling, the quarrel between brothers, the conflict between the brothers. Why this conflict? Why you are not able to agree with the other person? Why or dialogue with the other person? Have you any time thought about it? You are disturbed by that only. What else disturbs you? What is your problem? If you don't have a bodily pain, if you have other things, if something which very much affects you is not there. Many people do not have all those things, but still they are not happy. If the other man is happy, you are unhappy. So these external conflicts, the conflicts between brothers, the conflicts with your wife, with your father, your family people, your neighbor, your boss, your subordinate, all these things are because of internal conflict. There is an internal conflict in us. That internal conflict comes out of the external conflict. The internal conflict only becomes the external conflict. So the reconciliation of our internal conflict is the subject matter dealt with in Vedas, in the Puranas, in the Itihasas, and in all the stories. So the reconciliation of conflict is the subject matter. The conflict is here. Our internal conflict is real conflict. The reconciliation of the conflict, it is therefore needed for everyone, whether we accept it or not. I don't believe in all this, perfectly okay. But there is conflict in you, and you are every moment you are trying to come out of it, but you are failing, because what exactly is to be done for that is not known. So the spirituality, the philosophy speaks that actually, that subject. This is your conflict. The reason is this, to reconcile. But that matter is not clear, however much it is told, it is not clear. When Buddha says, be good, what does it mean to us? What is good? Be good means what? Be good means what? I give you one banana, is it good? That is what is meant. So 20 bananas are I cannot eat, so I give one to you. That is good, I have done good, okay, but still the conflict will be there. So it is not the internal act, it is not the action. What is happening to your internal chemistry? What is happening at your mental level? What is happening here? So the essence of the Mahabharata, he has told in one sloka. As you know that war was between the two people, Pandavas and Kauravas. So the Duryodhana coveted all the wealth and he amassed everything and made the other fellows partner. Driven of this, he was having all this power, very great power he had. And he had got all the great warriors, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, all people that are all with him. Everything was with him. So, and he had got the power, the money, everything was with him. And the Pandavas did not have, although only had Sri Krishna with them. But finally, Duryodhana died. And how he died? All his brothers were killed. But Duryodhana did not die. The last war was a duel between Bhishma, between Bhima and Duryodhana. With mace, with Veda. And in the last war, he was not killed. Bhima did not kill Duryodhana. He broke his thigh. So when the thigh was broken, he falls down. So the poet says, Bhagra Uru, Patitaha, Nishparijataha, Jivan Hridehi Bhakshitaha. So Bhagra Uru, thigh is broken. He falls, thigh is broken, falls down. Bhagra Uru, Patitaha, fallen down. Then it was evening, so the vultures are roaming about. So what is it? So they say the blood here. So they come and pick some flesh from here. The dogs come. And while he is alive, the dogs eat this flesh. The wolf comes and eats the flesh. Nishparijanaha, he wants little water. Nobody is there to help. He looks for people. Nobody, all his brothers have died. So nobody is there. So he has fallen down, eyes broken, and he cannot do anything. He wants a cup of water. No, not even a single person is available to help him. And while he is alive, his flesh is being eaten by vultures and dogs. This will be the condition of you if you don't follow Dharma. And what is Dharma? Dharma is the reconciliation of the internal conflicts. All the wrong things we do because of the internal conflict. You are basically a good person. You do wrong things because there is an internal conflict. There is something in you which tells to go against your real nature. You want to do good things, but it makes you do wrong things. So the reconciliation of that internal conflict is the theme dealt with in all these things. And it is told in different ways. Whether if you read, if you know Veda, this internal conflict you will not be. Studying the Veda will not help you to reconcile the internal conflicts. Now these Purana Kathas, Bhagavad Gita, those Kathagas, they will also be like us only. They will also have all these problems. They will also be bothering with the people. They will also have internal, external conflicts. So the reconciliation of internal conflict is the real sadhana. So that is what is dealt with by all these authors, right from Vyasa Bhagavan to from Krishnanji Maharaj. This is being done actually. They tell it in their own way. Something we understand, something we don't understand. But certain procedure they say, you do this, you do this. They would say, we would how to do, we would do not know. And they also don't say how to do it. They say some things, you do little kirtan, you do Namajapa, you do Bhagavad Nam Sankirtan. All these exercises, knowingly or unknowingly, because we may not be knowing what is happening. So it will help you to reconcile. Suppose if you are attending satsang, to that extended time, to that period, you are absent from that conflict. Otherwise, you will be always thinking something which is detrimental to you. All your thoughts are useless and detrimental to you. Whatever, even if you are planning something, that those all things are detrimental to us. It's not good for us. Whatever it is, even good thoughts, I want to help her, that also, that will be some ego. So the more we think about God, the more we keep our mind free from these worldly thoughts. That is possible only during satsanga. Here now, you can't think anything else. Otherwise, then you have got internal conflict. You will not think about the conflict now. Your mind is free from all these conflicts. And whether I am having conflict or not, you don't think like that. You know it is, you know that. How to reconcile, I have not given you an idea, and even if I give an idea, you will not be able to do it. Even I will not be able to do it. It happens naturally. So for some time, we are free from these thoughts actually. For some period of time, as long as you are singing, Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari was singing at that time, we are free from that. As long as we are chanting Bhagavan's name, we are free from that actually. That's why Gurudev, in his universal prayers, he says, let thy name be ever on our lips. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us sing thy name. Let thy name be ever on our lips. So the more we are thinking about about God, the more we are chanting Bhagavan's name. Initially you chant the same bhajans, etc. Afterwards, without knowing also you will be doing it actually. Initially they are attracted by the rhythm of that. When somebody is saying, Hare Rama, we are not thinking about Bhagavan, we are only tuned up to the rhythm. Hare Rama. So we are tuned up to the rhythm. So not thinking about Bhagavan, but when you get tuned up to the rhythm, you are absenting yourself from the other thing actually. So the negative aspect is removed there. When you are tuned up to this rhythm, otherwise nothing positive happens. The negativity is not there. The absence of negativity is the positivity only. There is no intermediate place. There is no midpoint is there. So that is what first thing Bhagavan Gurudev is that let thy name be ever on our lips. And then he says, let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. What do you think of all these names and forms? What is names and forms? You know that name is Nama, form is Rupa, Nama Rupa. What is Nama Rupa? What is Nama Rupa? Nama Rupa is the object. Nama Rupa is object. Anything other than you is an object. Anything other than you is an object. And anything other than Nama Rupa is what? Ourself is what? Subject. So there are two things, subject and object. Okay? Subject is, you are the subject, and whatever you understand is object. So there is a subject-object relationship is here. Here I am the subject and I have got an object outside. So there is always a subject-object relationship. So the object is the creation of God. You are also a creation of God. So there is no distinction between the subject and the object. There is no difference between the subject and the object. Suppose if you look at your finger is an object. Okay? You are looking at oh, then my finger is broken. The nails are big, I have to cut. It's an object. But you are a subject. One understands the subject. Whether there is any distinction between the object and subject here, do you make a difference? You don't make a difference. Can you see that like that? When you look at your son, when you look at your neighbor, when you look at your enemy, whether you can reconcile that object and this subject and make it as a one, as you see your finger. Is it possible? Let us behold thee in all these names and forms means what actually? How can you behold God in everywhere, in everything? God is all pervading, we say. Is it possible to see Bhagavan as all pervading? Is it possible to see an object as not different from the subject? That is what is needed actually. So this is the subject matter in the Upanishad, in the Brahma Sutra. The difference between the reconciliation of difference between the subject and the object. Subject-object relationship, reconciliation is the subject matter dealt with in the first four sutras of the Brahma Sutra. Vishaya Vishayanoho. Vishaya and Vishaya. Vishaya means object. Vishaya means subject. The reconciliation of subject and object. The subject himself protects the object. Whatever you see, whatever you understand, is your concept. Your dog see you, your wife see you, your son see you, and an outsider see you. This object is one, you are the object. And your son look at you, he is the subject. And your wife looks at you. A dog looks at you. A tiger looks at you. Each one will have different opinion. So which are, you are an object for all these things. Each one will conceive different ways. So your concept about a thing, about anything, it is your own concept. It has nothing to do with the object. The reality of the object is never conceived. What is conceived is how you want to conceive it, that way you conceive it. You don't have a real vision of an object. All our understanding of an object is our own vision. It has nothing to do with the reality. In reality, it is Bhagavan himself is there as the object. And you are conceiving as you wish to conceive. When you look at me, how you understand me depends upon how you look at me. It is your own concept. It has nothing to do with me. So Bhagavan has created this, means he has created himself. When Bhagavan is all means everything is God himself, Bhagavan himself. But we see different things. We make a difference between this is different from this. So, reconciliation of all these differences, transcending all these differences, is ultimately the highest philosophy. That is what is to be achieved. That is what is being done. Told in the Upanishads, in the Brahma Sutras, in all our scriptures. So, may God and Bhagavan help us, Gurudev bless us to have that vision. Hari Om Tat Sat.